Good morning and welcome back to the channel. This is Tiffany, and I just want to give you a real quick video and show you how I make my apple cider vinegar from my apple scraps. So I use the pulp out of my juicer as well as uncooked peels and cores from my apples. Now the biggest thing is when you're making apple cider vinegar, the biggest thing you're fighting is bacteria. So as I'm peeling or coring apples, any bad parts that might already have bacteria growing actually get thrown to the chicken, so it goes in the chicken bucket. So I'm pretty picky about my scraps as I put them in here. But if you do get one in there that has a little bad spot, you're probably going to be okay because the fermenting process is pretty strong with this. The other thing is, since we're fighting bacteria, we need to be careful of our tools. So I don't use any plastics or any wood. I also boiled all of my jars, including my water jar, before I got started. I also cleaned these scrap Dutches a lot, so they were really clean before I put my scraps in there. Once I put my scraps in there, the scraps go in the refrigerator or someplace cool until I'm ready to use them. If I run out of refrigerator space, I have froze them in the past. The scraps are fine frozen, and then you can thaw them. Again, though, be careful what you put them in. You don't want to pick up any bacteria at any stage, or you'll ruin your apple cider vinegar. So like this is a knife I would not use. Even though it's metal, I would not use it because it has all these seams. This could hold bacteria. This is what I use to stir with. It's a one-piece metal knife. There's no seams, and I boiled this along with my jars. So again, these are the hair ties I'm going to use on the top. I boiled those with the rest of my supplies. So again, the big thing is just making sure you have really clean supplies when you're doing this, because that bacteria or that mold gets started in there and it's really going to mess up your vinegar. So that's the big part. So what I do with my scraps, I like to put the cores and the peels on the bottom because they tend to float, and we want the liquid on top of them, on top of the apple scraps. So I do the scraps on the bottom and then the pulp on top. You want your jar full, but you don't want it packed. We're fermenting, so we have to leave room for the bubbles to be able to move around in there as it ferments. So we're going to put the scraps in there. Then we're going to put the liquid in. This is my water jar. What I do is 1 tablespoon of sugar or honey, either one, to 1 cup of water. So when I make it up by the gallon or half gallon, let's say a gallon would be a heaping 1 cup. Half gallon, this was a half a cup of sugar. If you use raw honey, it has to be raw honey. It can't be honey from the store. It would need to be really raw filtered honey, or maybe unfiltered. I've never used unfiltered. It does slow the process down. Honey does work, but it's a lot slower. You're going to double the times that I'm telling you in this video. This right here just has sugar in it. And so what happens is we put the sugar in the water. I do not use hot water because I don't want to degrade the sugar in any way. I use like a lukewarm or a room temperature water. If you are in town or on any sort of processed water, you need to let your water sit on the counter for a minimum of 24 hours and let any chlorine or fluorine or any of that stuff to evaporate out of that water. Any of that in that water, and you are not going to have fermentation. So make sure you have that you have filtered, unchlorinated, untreated water. You can buy water at the store that you could use, but make sure that you don't have any of those chemicals in your water. Just stir it until the sugar dissolves, and then we're going to fill up our jar. You don't want it full clear to the neck. Give it space to ferment, but just fill up your jars, and then you have several ways to cap it. Don't put an actual lid on it. You could use a coffee filter. Many times I've used coffee filters. This year I'm using these material scraps that I save for it, and you're just going to put the lid on it. Now I do clean this area all the way down to the water level because I don't want it to mold. I don't want bacteria to grow. So I clean that in there and make sure that it's nice and clean, and then I cap it with the cloth. So now what, right? Oh, one more thing. As you're filling it with water, you're going to probably have to take your stir knife and poke it down in there. You want to make sure all of the little holes are filled up. You don't want any air bubbles or any pockets in there. So make sure that you have the liquid all the way to the bottom. Okay, so now that we have it capped, we're going to find a cool but not cold, dark place. So my vinegar sits, or my jars, my fermenting vinegar sits in my closet in my sewing room. which is unheated unless I'm up there. So it gets very, very cold in the closet. So it takes it a while for it to ferment here. I leave it with the scraps for 2 weeks, between 2 and 3 weeks. Kind of depends on my schedule. So I set it on my phone to remind me in 2 weeks I need to strain the vinegar. And after 2 weeks, I strain out all of this pulp, all of this scraps, and then I just put it right back in the jar and I put it back in the closet. Put these little caps on, put it back in the closet for another 2 to 4 weeks. For me, because my closet is colder, it slows down the fermentation process, so it's normally 4 weeks. I've had a few that I've had to wait even longer than that, maybe up to 6 weeks. When you are filtering out your scraps, your apple scraps, your apple cider vinegar is going to have a sweet apple cider smell. If you have like a dark or a grayish like scum on the top, that's okay. Just scrape that off. Don't leave that in there. Scrape it off before you strain out the pulp, the scraps. Then these scraps are super safe to go to your chickens, your pigs, so feed this to your livestock. Or you can compost it if you don't have livestock. This is excellent in your compost. Then take the liquid, which is it's your half fermented apple cider vinegar. Put it back in the closet. Do not combine them. Put them back in the same jars. Give them that room for fermentation, okay? Don't try to save space by combining the jars. Put them back in there for 2 to 6 weeks. When it's ready, it will definitely smell like vinegar. Like normally not the whole room, I can smell it from in the room, and I know my apple cider vinegar is ready. You can taste it. When you're happy with the fermenting process, it's the right texture for you. Put a lid on it. You can combine them all, put a lid on it. They can stay in the refrigerator. I put mine at that point out. I put some of mine out in the barns at that point because I use it for my livestock. I put it in the water. I use it for cleaning out in the barns, all kinds of stuff. And by the time this is done, we're talking, Christmas, December. This is September now. And so somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm normally finishing up my apple cider vinegar. And so it's cold outside. And so I put it on the shelf in the barn. And it does really, really, really well. And that's apple cider vinegar in a nutshell. I can't think of anything else. Oh, if you get like a glob of gel on it, that's actually the mother. So sometimes you won't get that. That's okay too. But if you do get like a little glob, you can take that off if you want and save it. And then like next year's vinegar, you could put that in, and that would like jumpstart the fermentation process. Or you can leave it. I just normally leave it and just shake it up and leave it in there. So then I have apple cider vinegar with the mother, which is super great for all of those uses that I already mentioned. So apple cider vinegar in a nutshell. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.